Whew, listen to that fire go. I know you all like to be cozy while you nestle in for some great stories with yours truly, Dr. Plague. So, it is my great joy to say welcome to you all to Cozy Horror. I've got 5 more great stories from 5 more great writers. So, snuggle in, get something warm to drink, get cozy, and let's begin with another great day of fellowship and storytelling. Coming to us first is another great and well-known face on the channel, New Age Solutions, with a story about something strange that's come up in show and tell. So let's hear a story about how my son brought a head to show and tell.
Miss Fiora, can you please come to school as soon as possible? Miss Morgan, the school guidance counselor, asked. Julian isn't hurt, but he's in a very serious situation. When I asked what happened, Miss Morgan said it was better to explain when I arrived. Bewildered and unnerved, I feared the worst when speculating what my 8-year-old might have done. Julian could sometimes be a bit unruly at home, but never once got into any trouble at school. Julian's teachers loved him, and he appeared to get along with all of his classmates, which made this so unusual. Despite pondering every conceivable scenario during the drive, I never would have guessed what my son had ultimately done in a million years. My stomach sank when I saw an ambulance and a trio of police cruisers in front of the school. After parking in the visitors' parking lot, I was greeted by Mrs. Morgan, Mr. Quatero, Julian's teacher, Mrs. Jones, the principal, and 2 police officers, one of whom happened to be my cousin, Brady. I noticed none of them looked angry. They all had the same disturbed looks of horror and disbelief across their face. Miss Fiora, thank you for coming so quickly, Miss Jones said. Where's my son? I asked anxiously. What did he do? He's with Miss Isbister right now, the school psychologist, Miss Jones quickly replied. Before I could ask any questions, Brady stepped forward and took me aside. Look, they figured it'd be best if I tell you what's going on, so brace yourself, Brady said softly, taking a breath before continuing. Julian brought a head to school, an actual human head. What? Was all I could gasp out, after not saying anything for a few seconds, unsure if I'd heard Brady correctly. He had it in his backpack. Did you see him leave the house today? I waited with him for the bus like I always do every morning. I was unsure if there was a hint of suspicion in Brady's voice. I had no reason to think anything out of the ordinary was going on. When I asked Brady what exactly happened, he motioned for Mr. Quatero, who slowly walked over to where I stood. Mr. Quatero was visibly distraught over the incident, as indicated by his trembling hand, ironically only having 4 fingers, when we briefly exchanged a shake. When Brady asked him to recount the happenings, Mr. Quatero swallowed nervously before beginning. The kids were supposed to have show and tell yesterday, but we just couldn't get to it in time, so I had them do it today before lunch, Mr. Quatero said, his face contorting with disgust while giving the account. When it was Julian's turn, he said he brought in a special friend. He just pulled it out of his pack like it was nothing in front of the whole class. Julian said the head was his Uncle Milty, Brady added. He doesn't have an Uncle Milty, I said, staring mystified at my cousin. Did he say where he found it? He said the head was growing from the ground in the woods behind your house. My blood ran cold and my mind started racing. I wasn't sure what rattled me more, Julian seeing and physically handling a human head, or the grim prospect that someone's remains were discarded a stone's throw away from where my family slept. Julian wasn't allowed in the woods bordering the backyard unsupervised, and even when permitted, knew he had to stay within view. When could he have made such a gruesome discovery without us knowing? Take me to my son. Julian was playing with Legos in Miss Isbister's office when I entered, seemingly unaware of the situation's severity. Miss Isbister said Julian was immediately brought here, while he and Mr. Quatero tried getting his class under control. When I asked if Julian explained why he did this, Mr. Isbister's answer sent a sharp chill down my spine. He said Uncle Milty told him to. Mr. Isbister let Brady and I speak with Julian alone in his office. My son was elated to see me, and seemed under the impression that this was some kind of special occasion. The innocent, unsuspecting look on his young face showed Julian appeared unaware that he'd done anything wrong, which for me made this ordeal extra difficult. "Julian, do you know what's going on?" I asked while sitting with him on the couch. "Do you know why we're here right now?" Julian's smile faded when he saw how concerned Brady and I looked. "Julian, who's Uncle Milty?" I asked, when my son's eyes started to wander around the office. "You don't have an uncle with that name." "He lived in a hole behind our house," Julian said nonchalantly, appearing more interested in getting back to playing with the Legos. "I'm helping him find a new home." Brady and I looked at each other, both of us visibly perturbed by Julian's answer. "What do you mean, cuz?" Brady said quickly, seeing that I was at a loss for words. "Can you tell me exactly where you found the head? Uncle Milty?" Julian's smile returned. "I was trying to find a ball I hit really hard into the woods, and I found him sticking out of the ground." I knew the exact day Julian was referring to. This past Saturday afternoon. Julian and my husband had been playing baseball when he hit an absolute howitzer that sailed into the tree line. Although they spread out to find the ball, my husband said Julian was always within view. It took over half an hour for them to find it, and I do remember losing sight of them quite a few times while they searched. Julian must have found it then, I thought, becoming deeply unsettled when I imagined the naive look on his face when he made such a grisly discovery. "Would you be able to show us where you found him?" Brady asked. "And did you take Uncle Milty with you the day you found him?" Julian shook his head. "I visited him again before he told me to take him. He lived where the woodpile used to be." Julian was talking about a large mound of firewood in our backyard. It took a few days, but my husband and I had relocated all the wood to another part of the yard. Its original location was a few yards into the tree line. We wanted to build a shed there, but wound up finding a better spot, despite clearing the area. I nodded at Brady, indicating I knew the exact spot Julian was describing. "Julian, what do you mean when you said he told you to take him? Who are you talking to?" Julian looked at Brady perplexed. "Uncle Milty. He told me that I could take him with me." "So you've been talking to this Uncle Milty head, like how the three of us are talking right now?" I asked, tightly pursing my lips when Julian nodded his affirmation. I don't know what I'd have said if someone told me earlier today my son would bring a human head into school that was also his imaginary friend. Mr. Isbister said Julian may have been severely traumatized by what he found, and imagined that the interactive qualities were a way of coping. When Julian was getting looked at by the school nurse, Brady took me to see if I recognized the head's face. The severed head was kept in an ice-filled cooler out in the ambulance. It was in a large, clear evidence bag, and looked to have only died fairly recently. I didn't recognize the man, who appeared to be in his 30s and had a bloated face with narrow cheeks, large black eyes, a Roman nose, thick pink lips, and short blonde hair. His eyes were still open, looking in different directions, and the mouth hung agape, its tongue partially protruding from between its teeth. The head's whitish-beige skin had patches of mottling, darkened veins, proverbial deathly gray tints synonymous with corpses. I only looked long enough to verify I didn't recognize the man's face, before having to suppress an upcoming urge to vomit. Julian was medically and physically evaluated before we were both interviewed by detectives at the police station. We didn't get home until later that night, and by then a forensics team had already set up shop on my property. Brady kept me informed and was at my house monitoring the situation. The whole area in front of my home was quarantined off by yellow police tape and jam-packed with a sundry of police vehicles. Brady and one of the detectives met me at the perimeter. I kept Julian near me while walking up to Brady and the other detective, who had me bring my son inside when we spoke. Our cadaver dogs instantly picked up a scent and brought us right to the spot your son mentioned. The detective, whose last name was Vendetto, began. "We unearthed a shallow grave containing the remains of a body. A headless body. Despite largely expecting this, hearing someone confirm that it was actually real made it no easier to accept. There was a corpse buried on my property that nobody probably would have found if we hadn't moved a heaping woodpile. A decomposing body my son had the misfortune of discovering. No child is ever meant to experience those kinds of realities life offers at such a delicate age. Although Julian maintained a reserved exterior thus far, I shuddered to think what actual thoughts and impacts this experience might have on my son. If it really was where the old woodpile used to be, which was there before I ever bought the house, it had to have been there for a long time, right? I inquired, particularly emphasizing how the woodpile predated when my family lived at the house. Well, that's the thing, Brady replied, getting an approving nod from Detective Vendetto. Whoever's head Julian found has probably only been dead for 7 or 8 days tops. The other remains were buried there for a while, years probably. I squinted in confusion at Brady and the detective. So, they're looking for a body right now. There's 2 out there. Maybe not here, Detective Vendetto said. We haven't found any more remains yet, but we think someone might have dismembered and dispersed another body, whose head your son found. It didn't make any sense. There was no way the head Julian found and decapitated remains they discovered were the same person, but I couldn't chalk up Julian finding the head where a set of other remains lay as a coincidence. Without any substantial proof, however, we were only left to speculate. Despite a thorough search of the woods behind my house and surrounding area, no additional human remains were ever found. Since the body was on our property, we had to be formally cleared of any wrongdoing. While undergoing that process, more peculiar happenings occurred. 2 days after the incident, Brady told me that the head Julian found went missing at the police station, seemingly disappeared overnight without a trace. 1 week later, Julian's teacher, Mr. Quattro, was killed. Only his severed head was discovered. The man's body was never found. My husband and I kept Julian out of school since that day, and were considering transferring him so he could have a fresh start. Hearing news of his teacher's demise, which I kept away from him, prompted us to go through with the move. Even before eventually selling the house, we packed up and relocated to a new town, Julian adjusting well, despite still receiving therapy to help him manage his understanding of what had happened, always speaking of Uncle Milty in high regard if he ever came up in the conversation. Our new home was closer to my job, and Julian made friends quickly at his new school. About 3 months passed since his show-and-tell incident. It was Julian's birthday, who I hadn't gotten a chance to call since my morning and early afternoon had been filled with back-to-back meetings and calls and appointments. I was already behind schedule and putting the final touches on a report that was 15 minutes past due. I heard my office door open, which I knew was my final appointment before lunch. Keeping my eyes glued to the computer screen, I told my client to sit tight for 5 minutes, determined to have this write-up finished and sent before shifting gears. I heard him mutter something under his breath in a disgruntled tone before walking up to one of the chairs in front of my desk. While finishing the report, I pulled up my calendar to view my meeting details, since my assistant made some last-minute changes to the morning schedule and failed to specify what they were before going to lunch. Soon as the appointment opened on my screen, however, I heard the abrupt footsteps of the client walking towards the door. "I'm so sorry about that. I didn't mean to be rude, but..." I was worried my inattentiveness may have rubbed him the wrong way, but I quickly pulled my eyes from the computer just as he was about to leave the office. I caught a long enough glimpse to remember his face, long and narrow with beady, sly-looking black eyes, reddish-pink lips that formed a half-smirk, a balding forehead, and short, dark hair. Adjusting his fleeced, tall neck collar, he looked at me with disgust and disappointment before closing the door behind him with his hand. I quickly stood up and tried to gesture for the man to stay, kicking myself for being so inconsiderate and dreading the possible ramifications of this misstep. He looked oddly familiar, I thought while hurrying across my office. Hoping to catch him, I swung the door open, but he was already gone, stomping away in frustration. I slowly shut the door, thankful my assistant didn't witness my spectacle. Turning back to face my office, I froze after noticing a package on one of the chairs. It was a square box about 14 by 14 and gift-wrapped in plaid red and green paper. There was a card taped to the top of the package, addressed to my son. Upon reading it, I was hit with a spinning lightheadedness when I remembered where I had previously seen that man's face. "Dear Julian, wishing you a happy birthday, as promised. Thank you again for helping me to get a new look. We'll talk soon. Uncle Milty." I stood there, holding the card in my shaky hands, constantly rereading the handwritten note inside of it while trying to comprehend who was just in my office. However, it wasn't his face being that of a severed head Julian had found, which had filled me with paralyzing terror. The man's hands he'd used to shut the office door behind him with only had 4 fingers.
Sometimes on these rainy days, if you listen close, you can hear the rain coming down the chimney to pop against the fire. It's always kind of soothing. I like listening out for it. Our next story comes to us from, oh no, Society Menace, another well-known name on the channel. This one is a strange tale about brotherly love and how a pair of twin brothers are inseparable, even in death.
Lewis and I were identical in nearly every way. We shared the same sandy hair, the same piercing eyes, even the same mischievous grin that drove our parents up the wall. Growing up, we were 2 halves of a whole, our lives so intertwined that it was impossible to imagine one of us without the other. We did everything together. Everything. Whether it was exploring the woods behind our house, playing endless games of basketball in the driveway, or staying up late into the night, whispering secrets and dreams. We were inseparable. Even our friends and teachers struggled to tell us apart, and we loved to play pranks, swapping places, watching confusion unfold. Our bond was more than just physical. It was almost telepathic. We had our own language of glances and gestures, a silent communication that only we understood. It was comforting, knowing that no matter what happened, we always had each other. But we weren't just best friends. We were rivals, too. There was always a healthy competition between us, whether it was for better grades, faster race times, or who could tell the best jokes. Lewis had a natural charm that drew people in, while I was more introspective, preferring to observe and think before acting. Despite our differences, we completed each other perfectly. As we got older, our interests began to diverge. Lewis became passionate about music, spending hours in his room practicing guitar, while I threw myself into sports, determined to make the varsity basketball team. Still, our bond remained unshaken, and we always found time for our shared adventures. One of our favorite traditions was the annual summer camping trip with our dad. Every year, we would pack up the car and head to the same remote campsite, far away from the noise and distraction of everyday life. Those trips were magical, filled with late-night ghost stories around the campfire, fishing in the clear, cool lake, and hiking through the dense forest trails. It was during one of these trips that we discovered an old abandoned cabin deep in the woods. The place was, well, it was a wreck, with broken windows and a collapsed roof, but to us, it was a treasure trove of possibilities. We spent hours exploring, pretending it was our secret hideout, a place where we could escape from the world and just be ourselves, whoever we wanted to be. As the years passed, the cabin became our sanctuary. Whenever life got too overwhelming, we would sneak away, escaping to our secret refuge. It was there that we had some of our deepest conversations, sharing our hopes, our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. But everything changed on that cold December night. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, filled with warmth and laughter. We had just finished decorating the Christmas tree, a tradition that always brought our family together. The house was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon, the soft glow of fairy lights, casting a cozy ambience. Lewis and I had been arguing earlier that day about something trivial. who got to put the star on top of the tree. It was a silly, childish argument, but it left a lingering tension between us. We barely spoke during dinner, each of us nursing our bruised egos. The fire started in the basement, in the room where our father kept the woodworking tools. We didn't notice it at first, too engrossed in our own worlds. It wasn't until the smoke alarm went off that we realized something was wrong. My father sprang into action, shouting for us to get out. The smoke was thick, filling the house with a choking haze. Lewis and I were upstairs, and as we tried to make our way down, the flames erupted, blocking our path. Panic set in, the reality of the situation hitting us hard. My father reached me first, his strong arms pulling me through the smoke and flames. I screamed for Lewis, but my voice was drowned out by the roaring fire. I caught a glimpse of him at the top of the stairs, his eyes wide with fear. Our gaze locked for what felt like an eternity. Then he was gone, swallowed up by the inferno. The fire department arrived too late. Our house, once a place of warmth and love, was reduced to ashes. Lewis, my other half, was gone forever. The grief that followed was indescribable, a constant ache that settled in my chest and refused to leave. My mom fell into a deep depression, her vibrant spirit extinguished. She would sit for hours, staring at old photographs of Lewis, her tears flowing freely. My father threw himself into his work, using it as a distraction from the unbearable pain. As for me, I was lost, wandering through life like a shadow of my former self. For a moment, it seemed like life might return to some semblance of normalcy. But then strange things started happening. It began with small, almost insignificant occurrences: flickering lights, unexplained hotspots in the house, the smell of smoke with no apparent source. At first, we dismissed them as coincidence, but the incidents became more frequent, more terrifying. The first real tragedy struck about a year after the fire. My mother was alone at home, lighting a candle in Lewis's memory, something she did every day. According to the fire report, it was a freak accident. The candle tipped over, igniting the curtains. By the time the fire department arrived, the house was engulfed in flames. My mother didn't make it out. Her death shattered us. My father and I were consumed by grief, barely able to function. We moved into a small apartment, hoping for a fresh start. But the fires followed us. Next was my father. He was a careful man, meticulous in his habits. One night, as he worked late in his home office, the apartment building caught fire. The cause was never determined. My father died trying to save other tenants. I was alone, the last surviving member of my family. The fear and paranoia became my constant companion. I was convinced that Lewis's spirit was behind the fire, seeking vengeance for his untimely death. The thought of my twin brother, once my closest friend, turned into a vengeful spirit was almost too much to bear. I tried to escape, moving from place to place, never staying in one spot for too long. No matter where I went, the fires followed me. I started seeing Lewis everywhere, in reflections, in dreams, in the flickering shadows of candlelight. His presence was a constant reminder of the past, a haunting specter that refused to let me go. One night, I woke up to find my bedroom filled with smoke. The fire alarm blared and flames licked at the walls. I stumbled out of bed, coughing and disoriented, but there was no way out. The door was blocked by fire. The windows were sealed shut. I was trapped. That's when I saw him, Lewis, standing there amidst the flames, his eyes filled with sorrow and rage. He didn't speak, but I felt his anger, his pain. I knew then that I had to confront him, to find a way to make amends. Lewis, I'm so sorry. His expression softened, the flames around him flickering and dimming. For a moment, it seemed he might forgive me, but then his face twisted in pain, and the flames roared back to life. I knew I had to do more. I should have saved you, I cried, tears streaming down my face. It should have been me. I miss you every day. Please, Lewis, let me make this right. The flames around us seemed to waver, and Lewis stepped closer. I could see the pain in his eyes, the torment that had consumed him. I reached out, my hands passing through the flames, and touched his ghostly form. In that moment, a wave of memories washed over me. Our childhood, the laughter, the shared dreams. I felt his pain, his anger, but also his love. The connection we had as twins, stronger than anything, was still there, buried beneath the sorrow and the anger. I love you, Lewis, I whispered. I always have. Please, let go of the anger. Let go of the pain. His eyes met mine for the first time since the fire, and I saw a flicker of recognition of the brother I had lost. The flames around us began to fade, the heat dissipating. Lewis's form grew faint, the anger in his eyes replaced by deep, abiding sadness. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to hurt you. Tears blurred my vision, and I nodded, unable to speak. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace, a release from the torment that had plagued us both. Lewis's form faded, the last remnants of the fire extinguishing with him. The room was silent, the air clear. I was alone, but I felt a sense of closure, a peace that had eluded me for so long. I knew that Lewis had finally found rest, that I could begin to heal. The days that followed were difficult, filled with grief and memories, but I no longer felt the oppressive presence of my brother's spirit. The fires had stopped, and for the first time since that tragic night, I felt a glimmer of hope. I still think of Lewis every day.
This next story is going to take us on a bit of a trip. So I hope you brought your bathing suit, because it looks like we're going to the shore. Though, I'm not sure how enjoyable it's going to be, given the nature of the story. This one started out life as a 4-parter, brought to us by Nick F.M. Burner, but I thought it deserved a better place, together, where it belongs. So, let's sit back and enjoy a nice long story about how his wife went to the shore and never returned.
I woke up on my couch this morning, and the first thing I noticed was the piercing headache that comes from a horrible hangover. Then I acknowledged that waking up on my couch, with the obvious signs of heavy drinking, instead of doing it in my bed with my wife peacefully sleeping beside me, was not exactly encouraging. So as I got up and went to clean myself up, I tried my best to remember everything that had taken place last night. As soon as I did, I felt guilty. My wife Sophia and I had a heated argument that ended when I eventually passed out on my couch from all the alcohol I had consumed. As soon as I stepped into our room, I noticed that she wasn't asleep on the bed like I had expected her to be. There was no sign of her, actually. No phone, no shoes, no purse, or any of her clothes hanging around the room. Nothing. Figured that maybe I had woke up too late and thought she had simply went out to grab lunch with friends. This theory was quickly buried when I checked the time on my phone. It was 9:20 a.m. This shook me up quite a bit. I didn't know where she was or what she was doing at this hour after drunkenly telling her the most insulting and degrading things I could think of,
Do you see where this is going? She could have spent the night revenge fucking some random loser for all I know. At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to hug her and apologize for all the horrible things I had said to her. The guilt I was feeling was only worsened when I noticed her profile picture was missing from my contacts app, meaning she either removed it or had blocked me. The latter seemed like the most likely of the two options, as ever since we met, she had always kept the same picture of her and her twin sister Cassie. I figure I needed to clear my head before doing anything stupid, so I decided to step into the bathroom and take a shower. As soon as I did, I let out a huge sigh of relief when I saw a sticky note attached to the mirror. Hey Alex, I'm really sorry about last night. I know I was acting like a total maniac and provoked you into saying things you didn't mean. I want you to know that I'm not mad at you and that nothing is wrong. I just went out to the beach to take a walk on the shore. I would have told you all this in person, but it seemed you were pretty passed out, and I didn't want to wake you up. Anyway, I'll be back soon. Love you. I smiled as I picked up the note and read it. I couldn't help but think, though, that despite this obvious sign that it was just me overthinking the whole situation, something still felt wrong. I brushed it off and proceeded to take a nice, long, hot shower. I felt a lot better as soon as I stepped out. My hangover was improved significantly, and the stabbing sense of guiltiness was almost gone. I got dressed and quickly tried to call Sophia, but it went straight to voicemail. This just made that lingering sense of worry suddenly reawaken itself. Then again, the beach had pretty much no signal, so I didn't worry about it too much and decided not to act immediately. Big mistake. Minutes turned into hours as I desperately waited for her to arrive. All I could think about was her long, shiny blonde hair and her beautiful blue eyes. I soon realized it had been 4 hours since I picked up the note she'd left, which meant that she'd been away for a lot longer than that, since I had no idea when she left. She never spent that much time on the beach. So at about 1:30, I decided to leave my house and go look for her. I ran into my good friend Max on the way to the beach. He told me he had just left the surf shop and how excited he was about working on a custom board for one of his clients. He quickly noticed I wasn't exactly matching his energy and seemed pretty worried, asking me if anything was wrong and how he could help. That was classic Max. He was always there for his loved ones. He'd stick with you through thick and thin, no matter what. That's why I was really glad I had ran into him on this particular day. I needed that kind of support, now more than ever. I quickly explained the situation to Max, and his typical massive smile gradually turned into a serious expression as I let out my concern. He took a deep breath before speaking. Okay, I would have thought she'd just stay mad and crash somewhere, but that note really complicates everything. Maybe she actually is still mad at you and still crashed somewhere, but she left you that note so you wouldn't come looking for her. I wouldn't worry too much, man. She's probably at one of her friends' house talking shit about you right now. But that's how it goes with her, man. She's a drama queen. She wouldn't just leave you without a big final face-to-face, right? What he said did make sense, but it still had me worried. Yeah, exactly. She wouldn't just leave without saying anything. That's why I'm worried. What if she actually came here and something happened to her? Well, in that case, I'm here to help you look for her. Although, I really don't think she's been kidnapped or anything. That's insane. Trust me, she's probably at someone's house enjoying some time away from her psychotic husband. He let out a soft chuckle, but quickly turned serious again when he saw his joke hadn't amused me. Look, man, if you want to help me look for her, I really appreciate it. If not, don't get in my way, I said with a stone-cold expression on my face. Roger that, he said, and quickly ran back towards the surf shop. I assumed he was choosing the latter of the two options I gave him, and scoffed quietly as I arrived at the beach. I was mistaken. About 20 minutes after he left, I heard Max calling out for me. I was too focused on looking for any signs of Sophia to turn around immediately, but when I did, I was delighted to see my friend along with the entire staff of his surf shop making their way towards me. They were equipped with flashlights, binoculars, and even an automatic weapon, in case things went sour. I couldn't help but smile at the sight before me, and greet my friends with a hug. We wasted no time and immediately split up into 4 groups, walking around the beach and asking every pedestrian if they'd seen a blonde-haired woman in her mid-20s. We were met with mostly negative answers until the sun started to set and our hopes of finding Sophia slowly disappeared with it. Before I knew it, it was already 7 p.m. We'd been asking around for any signs of my wife for more than 5 hours, and most of Max's team were starting to lose hope entirely. One of them suggested we call our search, and instead file a missing persons report with the local police. I stubbornly refused, noting that the local police are extremely incompetent, and missing person reports always lead to nothing. But deep down, I knew that was my best bet. Max quickly said, "I agree with Alex. The police won't do anything to help us. But Detective Hoffman might be a different story. I'll call him right now." I was confused by his statement. However, it gave me hope. Whoever this Detective Hoffman guy is, he could really help us right now. At least, help us more than the police would. Max quickly explained to me that Detective Hoffman is the client he talked about earlier. He was shopping for a birthday present to give his son, and a custom surfboard from Max's shop was what he chose. Max told me that they had become great friends, which by his standard most likely meant that they were mild acquaintances. But whatever kind of friendship they had was irrelevant. What mattered was that this guy was a trained detective who also worked as a private investigator. After a short phone conversation with Max, he agreed to help me find my wife in exchange for a hefty discount on his custom board. I was so thankful that Max actually agreed to this, but hey, that's Max for you. Detective Hoffman and I got in touch as soon as he ended his conversation with Max. We agreed to meet at my house the same night, so I said goodbye to Max and his crew, thanking them and especially Max for all their help. I quickly made my way back home. I still had a sliver of hope in me that as soon as I walked in the house, Sophia would be right there waiting for me. Of course, that wasn't the case, but my disappointment was short-lived as about 10 minutes after I arrived, I got a knock on the door from Detective Hoffman. I opened the door and greeted a tall but slender man into my home. He gave me a firm handshake and asked if he could come inside. I showed him in, and he immediately took off his large black trench coat to reveal a minimalist yet elegant white shirt and red tie. He made his way into my kitchen and asked me if I had any bourbon. I was a bit shocked by his confidence. Usually I would be the one offering booze to my guest. I didn't have bourbon, but I did have half a bottle of scotch left, so I offered it to him and he gladly accepted. I took out 2 glasses and handed them to him. He served a generous amount of brown liquor for both of us, put them on the kitchen table, and invited me to sit down. Again, his confidence was definitely a bit shocking to me, and I definitely could have mistaken it for arrogance. I decided to keep these thoughts to myself, though. The only thing that mattered to me was finding Sophia. "Listen, Alex, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I need you to be 100% honest with me if you want us to get anywhere. Understood?" "Yeah, I understand." "Fantastic. Now I want you to know that we have a confidentiality agreement in place, meaning anything you say cannot legally be shared to anyone. Understand?" "Yeah, I understand," I replied, definitely getting a bit nervous when he asked me that. I was afraid of what he might ask next. "Did you murder, attempt to intimidate, or physically or psychologically harm Sophia Adkisson?" I was lost for words, froze up. This Sherlock Holmes doppelganger thinks I killed my own wife. "No, of course not. How dare you even suggest something like that in my own home? I can't begin to explain how—" "No need to get defensive, Alex. I just need to have a full understanding of the situation so I can make an informed decision on how to proceed. I'm not suggesting anything. Tell me about Sophia. Did you notice any change in character in the days leading up to her disappearance? Did she show any signs or desires to terminate your relationship? Is she closer to any of her relatives or friends than she is to you?" I thought for a few seconds and then began to tell him about our big fight. I was drunk and thought it would be somehow acceptable to demand she stop seeing her twin sister Cassie so often. I hate to admit that I was jealous, but I was. I was jealous that my wife was spending so much time with her sister. God, I was such an idiot. I told Hoffman about Cassie. They were extremely close, but oddly enough, I never got to spend much time with her. Sure, I knew who she was, and I'd seen her around sometimes, but I never got the chance to properly introduce myself to her. The closest I ever got was at my wedding, when she congratulated me and Sophia, and we exchanged a few words of gratitude, but that was really it. I was bothered by the fact that my wife spent so much time with someone who was practically a stranger to me, even though I had absolutely no right to feel that way, since they had literally known each other since birth. "I understand. Do you happen to know where this individual resides at?" "Yeah, she lives about 4 blocks away." I didn't entirely understand the purpose of Hoffman's question, but I felt certain he would elaborate. Good. I'd like to speak with her immediately. I'll wait for you outside by my vehicle." He quickly stood up and grabbed his trench coat before stepping outside. I was a bit shocked by this, but I remembered my goal of finding Sophia, so I followed behind him and made my way to his black SUV. The drive over to Cassie's house was quiet and rather uncomfortable, but as soon as we got there, he handed me some sort of tape recorder and a pair of earphones. "I'm going in alone, but I need you to listen carefully to everything she says. Try and make connections between anything you learn and everything you already know. But I need you to stay cool and composed, Alex. I will pressure her heavily, so it's more than likely that Cassie will disclose some information that's new to you. But no matter how angry it makes you, you have to stay here, and you have to stay focused. Understand?" This shook me up a lot. I was not ready to find out what Sophia had been hiding from me, but I was certain that I was going to hear it anyway. Hoffman is intimidating, to say the least, and I just know that if there's truly a big secret that Sophia had trusted Cassie with, Hoffman would be able to get it out of her with ease. I observed anxiously from the vehicle as Hoffman made his way to Cassie's house. It was 8:21 p.m. when he gave the door 4 firm, loud knocks. He was about to knock for a 5th time when a short, blonde-haired woman greeted him with a confused expression on her face. "Good evening, Miss Atkinson. My name's Detective Mark Hoffman, and I'm here to ask you a few questions regarding the disappearance of your sister, Sophia Atkinson. Can I come in, or would you prefer I take your statement from outside your residence?" That was a sneaky trick by Hoffman. Casey wasn't legally obligated to tell him anything, but his concise and confident demeanor would make her think she was. I told you, this guy was good. Sure, Mr. Detective. Please come in." Hoffman took a glance at me in the car before calmly walking into Casey's house. I heard a loud beep noise coming from the tape recorder-esque device that he had handed me a moment before. He just activated a wireless microphone hidden in his tie. The door closed and my visual presence was gone, but thanks to that little microphone, I could still hear everything that was going on inside that house. "Wow, okay, I didn't even know she was missing before you came here. When did this happen?" she asked, genuinely terrified. God, her voice sounded just like Sophia's. "I'm not sure you understand the dynamic here, Miss Atkinson, but I'm here to ask you some questions, not answer them." "Oh, I understand, Mr. Detective. Sorry, how can I help you?" "Think of this as an interview. Whatever you say won't help or hurt anyone but yourself. So I would advise you to answer each of the following questions honestly and to the best of your knowledge. Understand?" "Yes, Detective. I'm sorry." I couldn't help but feel bad for Casey. The girl was probably relaxing in her bed, and suddenly she learned that her sister was missing, and that she was considered somewhat of a suspect. Or at least, that's how Hoffman made it seem. She sounded so scared and vulnerable. "Please, take a seat." "Yes, sir." "Miss Atkinson, do you consider Mr. Alex Davis a friend of yours?" I felt a chill run down my spine when I heard my name being mentioned. Well, sort of, yeah, I mean, he's my sister's husband. Obviously, I care about him and stuff, but we're not, like, super close friends or anything. Did he do something to Soph?" "It's a yes or no question, Miss Atkinson. Shall I repeat it for you?" Hoffman shot the question back without even acknowledging her answer or her injury. No, I guess I don't consider him a friend," she said with as much composure as her voice was capable of. That stung. I mean, I could have probably guessed she'd say that. She'd probably also assume I had something to do with Sophia going missing. But it still felt bad. Hoffman just barely started, and I already wanted to step out of the car and go talk to her myself. This wasn't going to end well. Did Sophia Atkinson show any sign of being mistreated by Mr. Davis? Not mistreated exactly, but she did on occasions express being unhappy with the state of their marriage. What? What occasions? What the fuck was she talking about? I wanted to go in there and find out more, but I stayed calm, just like Hoffman had told me to do. Please go into detail about these occasions. What exactly did she feel unhappy about? Well, she sometimes talked about how Alex had a really bad temper, and I can assume he's probably an alcoholic from all the stories Sophia told me. She felt really upset whenever Alex drank more than he should have, because that's when he really lost his mind, according to her. That answer made me lose it. Why did Sophia talk to her about me? I was growing more and more impatient with every second that went by. I wanted to go in there so bad. And could it possibly be that Mr. Davis had one of his outbursts in the days leading up to Sophia's disappearance? Oh, definitely. It's more than possible. I think it's very likely, actually. He did have one of those outbursts quite often, according to my sister. I punched the glove box and gritted my teeth when I heard that. I knew it was true, but it hurt me more than it angered me. Did Sophia ever consider ending their marriage, Miss Davis? Yes, on many occasions, but she expressed a concern for her well-being if she did. She was scared of what Alex might do afterwards. I sat there and seethed. What the hell? Cassie was literally turning me into the prime suspect of this case, with the guy I had hired right there. I couldn't sit here like an idiot and take this much longer. Did Sophia have a backup plan, if you will, Miss Davis? I didn't even want to hear what Cassie had to say about that. Sort of. She was going to meet up with a painter she met on the beach. That was supposed to happen a few days ago, but she canceled on him. She told me she just couldn't do that to Alex, and she felt super guilty later. I was simultaneously relieved and completely enraged when I heard the answer. What painter? How could Sophia even consider cheating on me with some fucking painter? And a painter she had met on the beach, for God's sake? Probably some junkie who makes $2 an hour selling his shitty drawings to people who just feel bad for him. But at least she came to her senses, right? Please elaborate on this painter individual. What is his name and where does he reside? His name is Jamie. I can't seem to remember his last name, though. Maybe she didn't even mention it to me. As for the second question, I have no clue where he lives. But he works at the beach in a big blue tent by the main bar. Fucking loser, I whispered to myself. To the best of your knowledge, how did Jamie feel about Sophia canceling their date? He didn't take it well. From what I know, he tried to get in contact with Sophia a lot. She even blocked his number and started calling him from a different phone. It got really bad, so bad that Sophia had to change her number to avoid him. She lost all of her contacts because of this. Oh, that explained the whole missing profile picture thing. I wasn't sure how to feel. And did he try to contact Sophia in person? Maybe show up at her house on occasions? I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me if he did. And could a face-to-face confrontation between the two of them have led to Jamie harming Sophia in any way? Gosh, maybe. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Oh my God. Casey sounded worried when she said that. I should have been worried too in hindsight, but then and there I felt like I was losing my damn mind. I wanted to have a chat with this Jamie guy, maybe even stab him to death and throw his body in the ocean. That's all I've got for you, Miss Atkinson. Thank you very much for your time. No problem, Detective. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help. It sounded like Hoffman was making his way out of Casey's house, and sure enough, I saw him walk out with a blank expression on his face and start to walk towards me in the car. He stepped back in and began to drive back to my house, without saying a word. It was now 9:08 p.m. When we arrived, he gestured for me to unlock the door, and as soon as I did, he walked inside, no hesitation, and made his way to my kitchen to pick up a still full glass of whiskey and down it in one gulp. I'm really nervous about this Jamie guy. He gives me the heebie-jeebies. That was the most informal thing Hoffman had ever done and said since I met him. I quickly snapped back to my senses and replied, "Yeah, Detective, I feel the same way. I want to kill that guy right now." "Don't worry, I do too. I would go over and question him right now, but it's late, and I imagine he's probably gone. First thing tomorrow, I'll pay him a visit in his little tent." It seemed the alcohol had really loosened Hoffman up. I thanked him for his help and wished him a good night. He then firmly shook my hand and handed me his business card. I realized I didn't even have his number yet, and I had contacted him through Max's phone. But that issue was now resolved. He made his way out of my house. "Thanks for the drink, by the way. Take care of yourself, Alex. I'll see you tomorrow." Then he stepped into his car and was gone. Wow, a cop drinking and driving. I never thought I'd see that. I waved him goodbye and closed the door. I immediately collapsed onto the couch and started crying in rage. Whoever this Jamie guy was, and whatever he looked like, I was gonna fuck him up. In the middle of my breakdown, I decided to call Max. He almost instantly picked up, and we shared a short but meaningful conversation. "Hey bro, how'd it go with Hoffman? Man, that guy's a complete badass, isn't he? I imagine you already figured that out, though. Did you figure out what happened to Soph?" His demeanor did a complete 180 when he heard I was still weeping with tears of rage. "Oh shit," I heard him whisper, his tone terrified. I told him about Hoffman's chat with Casey, and especially about Jamie the painter. "Dude, I know that guy. He bought a few beanies and ball caps from my shop before." His tone was uncharacteristically enraged for Max. "What does he look like?" I desperately asked. Not gonna look great after these fists get their hands on him, buddy. I urged Max not to do anything. Hoffman was gonna go question him first thing in the morning, and that was final. Max sounded a little disappointed at me denying him the opportunity to beat Jamie's ass. But he was smart about it. He promised not to do anything directly, but he did say that he and his staff were going to keep an eye out for him. I didn't contest that, as I figured a few extra pairs of eyes couldn't hurt. I thanked him before hanging up, downing the glass of whiskey Hoffman had served me a few hours ago, and passing out on the couch. I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. It was a text from an unknown number. "Good morning, Alex. It's Detective Hoffman. I have many things to share with you, but one is definitely more urgent than the rest. Please listen to the following audio files." The text had a 6-minute audio file attached, so I curiously grabbed a pair of earphones and started to listen. It seemed that Hoffman was interrogating someone. "Mr. Jamie Watkins? Mr. Tall, Angry British Guy?" I guessed that the last bit was Jamie's voice. "Good morning, Mr. Watkins. My name is Detective Mark Hoffman, and I'm here to ask you a few questions regarding the disappearance of Sophia Adkisson." I could hear a light scoff coming from Jamie. Then he stayed silent for a few seconds before speaking again. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Detective. Frankly, Mr. Watkins, I know that's not true, so I'm going to remind you that if you choose to lie again during this statement, you can and will be charged with misleading an investigation." Hoffman sounded like he was losing his cool a little bit, which was definitely out of character for him. "And frankly, Mr. Detective, I'm not obliged to tell you anything, so I think I would rather have you stop wasting my time and stop drawing attention away from my work. Can't you see I'm working on a new piece here? God, you cops are such a pain in the ass." "You are correct, Mr. Watkins. You are obliged to tell me nothing, though it may be in your best interest to tell me what you know," Hoffman angrily replied, and I could hear the sound of a handgun being rustled against his belt. He probably flashed the gun at Jamie in an attempt to intimidate him. I learned it clearly didn't work as soon as Jamie spoke again. "Wow, yeah, that gives me even less reason to want to talk to you, and more reason to ask you to leave. If you do so right now, maybe I won't even tell your boss, Sheriff Stratham, that you literally just threatened me with a weapon. How does that deal sound, Mr. Marky Mark?" "I do not work under Sheriff Stratham, but thanks for the warning, Jamie. I imagine this would be an appropriate moment to disclose the fact that I've already gathered enough evidence to put you under arrest for kidnapping and possible murder. But hey, you should definitely continue to lie and provoke me." I wanted to believe Hoffman was lying when he said that. I just didn't want to believe it was possible that my Sophia had been kidnapped, much less murdered. "Ha! Why haven't you arrested me yet then, asshole?" Jamie sounded completely unbothered by the threat. "Because I want to help you, Jamie. I can help you if you help me. Tell me what you know about Sophia's whereabouts, and I promise I'll make sure that you don't ever see the inside of a jail cell." Jamie stayed quiet for an uncomfortable amount of time, before he let out a light chuckle and said, "All right, look, I was supposed to come over to her house one night when her husband was away, but then she rescheduled our little date to yesterday morning." I was speechless. I thought Sophia had canceled their date, but she met him the day she went missing? That was not looking good. Why would Cassie lie? Maybe she was being honest and Sophia lied to her about Jamie? Maybe it's fucking Jamie who's lying. I definitely wanted to believe the latter possibility. "And did you see her yesterday morning, Mr. Watkins?" "Yeah, I did. We went on a trip to Malu Island to grab lunch and a few drinks. That's all I know, I swear." Malu Island was a small but beautiful section of land about a 20-minute boat ride away from the town. "Please, go into further details about this trip," Hoffman said. "Well, nothing sexual or even romantic took place. We met at the shore at about 8:30 and bought 2 tickets from Maru Island. We didn't really do anything major once we got there. We just talked for a while and shared a few drinks at the main bar when she suddenly stood up and went to the bathroom. That's the last time I saw her." "She went to the bathroom at the bar and never came back?" Hoffman asked with a distrustful tone. "Yeah, she wanted about 20 minutes, and when I figured she just stood me up, I got up and left." Hoffman took a deep breath before speaking again. "Let's talk about you for a second. Do you work here at the beach full time, selling your art? Is that your main source of income?" "Correct," Jamie said confidently. "And where do you currently reside?" "I live in the trailer home just outside the area. It's maybe 10 blocks away from here. I'll write down the address." "Very well, Mr. Watkins. I will not be taking any further questions from you at this time. However, I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other soon." The record ended with that. I felt more confused than enraged.
Clearly someone was lying, and I desperately needed to know who. I guess I got caught up in this in my own head, because without really paying attention, I almost unconsciously grabbed for the bottle of scotch. Just as I was about to give in to my alcoholism, I was brought back to my senses by the sound of anxious knocking on my door. It was Max. My friend greeted me with one of his signature comfort hugs and quickly made his way to my kitchen as I closed the door behind us. "Dude, I got some news and you're gonna want to hear it," he said as he opened my fridge and tossed me a beer can. I was curious to hear what he had to tell. "Try to calm down, all right? One of my cashiers, Jesse, told me just now that he saw that Jamie guy sneaking into his tent with a big black trash bag. It looked like whatever was in it, it was moving." I felt a chill run down my spine as I heard that. Could it be? Max and I devised a plan to catch Jamie red-handed. We were going to keep a close eye on him all day long, and when he finally decided he was done selling his drawings for the day, we were going to follow him in Max's car. The stage was set. Max and I were poised on the roof of his surf shop with a pair of binoculars in hand. And sure enough, there he was. He was lounging on a folding chair inside of his ever-so-charming blue tent, with his paintings on display like they were the lost works of Da Vinci. I really can't understand why he was still there. It was 5:08 p.m., and by the look of it, every potential client of his already left the beach. Plus, it's not like anybody in their right mind would pay the ridiculous prices he was charging for his pieces of art. Maybe he didn't arrive at the beach so early and leave so late to sell his drawings. Maybe he did it to scout out victims, to get close to vulnerable people, without them suspecting anything. Maybe that's how he got my Sophia. I was lost in my thoughts when a firm tap on my shoulder brought me back to my senses. Max pointed towards the tent as he quickly jumped from the rooftop and unlocked his car. "Dude, look, he's leaving. Hurry the hell up or we're going to lose him." I quickly followed behind him and got in the passenger seat as fast as I could. Max started driving as soon as I'd closed the door, trying to keep an eye on Jamie's white van. He managed to get behind him without causing any suspicion, but I could tell Max and I felt equally as confused when, instead of turning right, away from the Bay Area and towards where the trailer homes he had told Hoffman about were, he took a left towards the wealthier side of town. We followed close behind as the white van made its way into an old garage, just outside of Springfield, the neighborhood home to the most luxurious vacation homes and most of the stunning apartment complexes in the area. We waited outside the garage for about 5 minutes, when suddenly Jamie drove out of the garage in an insanely over-the-top red sports car. It looked like something straight out of Grand Theft Auto. Max let out an audible gasp of pure shock. I instead stayed silent for a while as we followed that ridiculously expensive car. "Holy shit, how much do you think that thing's worth?" "I don't know, man. Like a couple of million at least. But the real question is, how the fuck did he pay for that?" "Maybe he stole it? I don't know. There's no way he paid for that. I mean, I've never seen anyone buy his shitty paintings." Max let out a soft chuckle in reply. "Dude, Alex, you're such a gullible goofball. I mean, it's obvious this whole painter thing is complete bullshit. This guy doesn't live in a trailer home, and he most definitely doesn't make a living selling those paintings on the beach. He's hiding something, and we're going to find out exactly what it is." But that doesn't make any sense. If you were a millionaire, why the hell would you pretend to be a junkie? Surely it would be the other way around, right? "Well, maybe he doesn't want people to know he's a millionaire." "But why? If I was a millionaire, I would be delighted to let people know. Why would anyone not want to take credit for that?" "That's exactly what we're here to find out, dude," Max said confidently. Earlier that day, before my friend and I had decided to go on this little investigation, I got a text from Hoffman. "Alex, I should tell you what I've been up to since our last interaction. I've decided that in order to eliminate all doubt regarding Mr. Watkins' supposed encounter with your wife, I had to investigate Malu Island. So I did, and I discovered absolutely nothing that could connect Mr. Watkins to the disappearance of your wife. Although on second thought, I think it would be convenient if you took a look for yourself. Perhaps the two of us should travel there tomorrow morning and give the island another sweep. But to be honest with you personally, I believe that the supposed encounter never took place there, or at least not in the way that Mr. Watkins described it to me. I can't describe how uncomfortable this individual makes me. I have really, really bad feelings about him. I'll pick you up at your house tomorrow morning, just after I pay our little friend another visit. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex. Take care of yourself." The red sports car finally stopped, pulling into the driveway of a home I would only describe as surreal. Imagine the kind of property that the Wolf of Wall Street would own if he never got caught by the FBI, and times it by 10. Jamie calmly stepped out of the luxury vehicle and watched as two muscular men dressed in tuxedos greeted him, and one of them proceeded to park the car in the home's private garage.
All Max and I could do was watch in disbelief as the scene before us unfolded. The house had a meticulously designed security system. It was no joke. There were cameras everywhere, at least 20 other unnecessarily jacked security guards dressed in tuxedos, a massive electric gate, about 15-foot-tall fence. Of course, because why not? There was a frigging sniper on the mansion's rooftop. It looked like a supervillain's hideout, straight out of a video game. After analyzing our situation, Max and I quickly figured out that our options were quite limited. We only had two, actually. Plan A, go home, or Plan B, die. Since we're not completely out of our minds, we decided to choose the first option and leave the investigation work to a professional, like our friend Detective Mark Hoffman, for example. We drove back to the surf shop and said our goodbyes for the day, with a bittersweet feeling. We basically had no progress, and we had made nothing towards finding Sophia. We were losing valuable time, and in this particular situation, it could be the difference between life and death. But hey, at least we didn't attempt to break into a deranged billionaire's house, right? When I finally got home, the loneliness hit me harder than it ever had. My wife had been missing for more than 2 days, and so far, all I've done about it is find out that she met up with a billionaire pretending to be a loser. She could be dead right now, or maybe she's still alive and in desperate need of some help. And yet here I am, at home, alone, doing absolutely nothing to help her. I tried to change that by calling Hoffman and explaining everything Max and I had seen. I also sent him some photos I took of Jamie's car and the house. To my surprise, Hoffman seemed quite unbothered by this. He assured me that he'll get something valuable out of Jamie tomorrow morning, and wished me a good night. I'm ready to do something about it. I'm ready to step up for Sophia. Tomorrow, Hoffman and I will investigate Malu Island, and I swear on Sophia's name that I will not go home empty-handed. I will find something that can allow Hoffman to legally search Jamie's home, and when it's over, she'll be right here, alive, and ready to finally come home with me. I miss her a lot. I actually woke up at a reasonable time for once. It was 7:30 a.m., and I was ready to finally do something meaningful. I'd called Hoffman the night before, and asked him if I could be present for the second interrogation of Jamie. I wanted to analyze everything about his demeanor, any signs of guilt in his body language, or manner of speech. I was going to notice it. Hoffman knocked on my door, and we decisively made our way into his black SUV. This made me reminiscent about the time he had interrogated Casey. The anxiousness and the uneasy feeling was exactly the same. I was excited to find out more about Sophia's disappearance, but absolutely terrified about what exactly I might find out. Hoffman broke the silence. Same thing as before. We'll use the same wireless microphone technology we did last time, and the rules are still the same. If I'm being honest, I have no idea what I'll be able to get out of Jamie, so please keep a cool head. This will either go extremely well or terribly wrong. Whatever happens, just stay here and do not leave the vehicle for any reason. Understood? Yeah, thanks, Detective. We pulled up to the beach, and Hoffman parked the SUV in a position that would give me a clear line of sight for the tent, but far enough away to keep the vehicle from raising any suspicions. Hoffman handed me the same tape recorder thing as before, and gave me a pat on the shoulder as he stepped out of his car. I think up to that point, I had never seen him nervous. Oh wow, look who decided to show up. My good old pal Sherlock Holmes. I missed you, buddy. What have you been up to lately? Jamie said, with an infuriating grin on his face. Show's over, Watkins. I now have conclusive evidence of your little side job, or side life, I should say. I imagine you wouldn't like it too much if that got out, would you? You'd probably lose a few clients if that happened. Jamie literally burst out laughing. How can someone be so relaxed when there's a trained detective interrogating them? Man, you crack me up, Mark. You're one hilarious dude. I'll give you that. I just wish you were as good a detective as you are a clown. You're facing multiple charges that could lead to more than 60 years in prison. Make that a life sentence when I connect you to the Adkins murder in a few days. How exactly is that hilarious to you? He's calling it a murder now. God, I really do hope this is a scare tactic. I can't even grasp the thought of my wife being dead. Murder? Is that how it is now, big shot? You don't even have a body, asshole. I literally own the police force, Mark. I'm perfectly aware of all your little scare tactics. You're pathetic. He wore a disgusted smirk on his face, but his smugness was still intact. Well, at least I tried, Hoffman said, reaching into his belt. He took out his gun and fired a bullet into Jamie's foot. Holy shit, this was insane. Jamie screamed out in pain, but his agony quickly turned into laughter. How could that be? The guy literally just got shot at, and he somehow found it funny. And so the plot thickens. Did you enjoy your little field trip, Mark? Jamie was now in a full-on fit of laughter. There's something seriously wrong with this guy. You sent me to Malu Island to find nothing. How funny. Hoffman cocked his gun and aimed it at Jamie's foot once again. You were wasting my time, so I thought I'd waste some of yours, Jamie said, still laughing hysterically. Hoffman then fired another shot into Jamie's foot, but this time around there was apparently no pain at all. In fact, it actually seemed to make Jamie laugh harder. Tell me what really happened to her, or it's your head next, Hoffman said, his weapon still firmly in hand. What really happened to her? Okay, what really happened to her is that I took her to my house and fucked her brains out. She begged me to stay, but I kicked her out as soon as I was done with her. Then after that, she probably killed herself when she realized she had to go back to Alex Davis. Jamie's fit of laughter got louder and more obnoxious with every word that came out of his mouth. I officially lost my mind when he said that. I didn't care anymore. I was getting out of this car and walking up to the scene. I was going to take Hoffman's gun away from him and put a bullet through Jamie's skull. I was in the middle of unbuckling my seatbelt to do just that when Jamie spoke again. That's priceless, Mark. If only you could see the look on your face. This play just keeps getting better and better. Perhaps it's time for the final curtain, but it seems like all the actors are yet to arrive. Jamie actually stopped laughing. His demeanor took a sharp turn into something a lot more menacing. You know exactly who I'm talking about. That idiot you call your client, sitting in your car like a coward. Listening to me right now, I bet. Come out and play, Alex. I wanted to go. I most definitely would have done so if I didn't notice that Jamie had some kind of assault rifle hidden under one of his paintings. So instead, I stayed in the car, like a coward. At this point, I hated myself more than I hated Jamie. Hoffman noticed it too, and he carefully walked back to the car, still facing Jamie, with his firearm in hand. He got in and drove away. That somehow went even worse than anything I could have imagined. Well, goddamn, now we're dealing with an actual criminal. I told you this guy was bad news, Alex. I had this weird feeling about him ever since day one. Hey, let's not waste time. Let's go to Malu. And that's what we did. As soon as Hoffman and I stopped off at the boat rental, we immediately started scouring every little corner of Malu. Not just the place that Jamie mentioned like Hoffman did last time. Every bar, every restaurant, shop, public area, we went there, trying to discover any clues that could lead us to the truth. Our efforts were seemingly worthless, until we decided to investigate that old, rusted-looking well located on the most desolate area of the island. I really wish we hadn't done that, but in a way, I'm also glad we did. My sanity could not have handled a single additional ounce of uncertainty, so discovering the truth, as absolutely heartbreaking as it was, felt oddly rewarding. We opened the well, and our eyes met with nothing but a pile of darkness. However, the smell was a completely different story. The well emanated a pungent odor, the scent of rotting flesh and solidified blood. When Hoffman lit his flashlight to reveal the source of that disgusting smell, I threw up in my mouth. My eyes stared in disbelief as my chest sunk like it never had before. What we had discovered was Sophia's corpse, staring back at us with those lifeless eyes. To this day, that sight keeps me up at night. I just can't get it out of my head. The way her mouth was frozen open, her hands rested stiff on what used to be her thighs. In that moment, I couldn't do anything more than just stand there, too numb to even react. I felt the urge to scream or cry, but my body just didn't respond. Hoffman and I just froze there. I can't even tell you how long. Time just didn't feel real at that moment. Nothing about that sensation seemed real to me. It was a terrible nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. It was, without a doubt, the worst day of my life, and I can say with certainty that I doubt there will be a worse one. If by any chance Jamie Watkins happens to be reading this entry, let me just tell you, the murder case coming your way should be the least of your worries. If you're unlucky enough to run into me one day, I swear that I will put you through the most excruciating pain that the human body can handle. I don't give a shit if we're in public. I will tear the flesh off your bones, rip apart every single one of your organs, one by one. You took my life away from me. You took the only thing I had. You took her away from me. I swear to God that one day I will do the same. I don't care how much I have to sacrifice. I will go to any lengths to destroy you and everything you have, even if it costs me my life. Take this as a friendly warning if you value your life. The best thing you can do is just plead guilty and hide in a prison cell like the dirty rat you are for the rest of your miserable existence. But even that won't help you. I'll find you, and I will make you pay for what you did to me. It's been a year since the events of my last entry took place. This time has been very uneventful, but there's still some important things that perhaps I should share. Jamie Watkins got acquitted of first-degree murder. I don't even care anymore. I could see it coming from a mile away. We didn't have any DNA or any piece of real evidence, just the audio recording from Hoffman's interrogation, and those got easily shut down. Since there were no witnesses of the interrogation besides me and Hoffman, the judge didn't even allow us to play it for the jury, and even if he did allow it, Hoffman literally shot Jamie twice during the interrogation, so it would have done more harm than good anyway. Again, I don't care anymore. I learned the hard way that enough money can get you out of damn near anything. I distanced myself from almost every person in my life who was there for the nightmare. I only really stayed in touch with two people, Max and Cassie. Max is my best friend, and he's been incredibly supportive through all this, always there when I need someone to listen to my drunken rants. And Cassie, well, I get the feeling that I like her a lot more than she likes me. I've stopped by her house quite a few times, and although she always allows me to come inside, she definitely seems very uncomfortable around me. But for some reason, this doesn't really bother me. I feel safe when I'm around her. It's a feeling that I can't replace with anyone else. When I talk to her, I feel like Sophia's the one listening to me. Her facial expressions, her body language, her smile, even her scent just makes me feel at home. I suppose it makes sense, since she's my wife's twin sister, but there's still something special about Cassie that I can't really explain. Max has been trying his best to keep me away from her. He says she's preventing me from moving on. He also told me that I'm not trying to replace one twin with another, and that it's disgusting that I would even think of it. I think he's right. I know I have to do something about it. It isn't right, and it isn't fair to Cassie. Max told me about a friend of his, a middle-aged lady who used to work as a cashier. Her name is Monica. She quit a few months ago in order to set up her own spiritual shop, and apparently it's been a huge success. Her clients are always satisfied, and she seems to magically get rid of people's problems. Just what I need. I decided to give it a try because, why not? It was going to be expensive for sure, but I figured it's better to spend my money on something that could help me, instead of buying nothing but pre-made food and whiskey. I drove there at night. Usually I'd be playing some music, but ever since the whole thing happened, I can't seem to enjoy anything anymore. Every song I used to listen to reminds me of her. Same with every movie and every show. Hopefully this Monica person can help me live a normal life again. Although I do have some serious doubts. Most places that sell spiritual items end up being a complete scam, at least from my experience. Hopefully this changes my mind. I arrived at the shop about 15 minutes after I left my house. Monica greeted me at the door and invited me inside. "You must be Max's friend, Alex, right?" she said with a big smile. "Yeah, that's me. I don't really know why I'm here exactly. There's something seriously wrong with me, so I'm hoping you could help me fix it." "Yes, Alex. Max told me all about you. I'm going to examine you, if that's okay. Please, take a seat." Examine me? What does she mean by that? I probably would have asked her to explain this examination of hers, but I really wasn't in the mood, and I didn't want to cause a scene. So I did exactly as she told me and sat down on the old brown armchair accommodated behind the counter. She then placed some sort of stone on my forehead, gently holding it still in her cold hand. After a few seconds, she removed her hand with the stone still in it, and just stayed quiet for a while. It was maybe close to a full minute before she spoke again. "You're broken. Something really traumatic happened, and you simply haven't been able to get over it. You're lost. You feel like you need to replace something that you've lost. But in reality, you don't know what you want. Give me a few minutes, please." Yeah, well, no shit. I think I already knew that, Monica. So far, this isn't quite worth the $500 fee she's charging me. Or that's what I thought, at least. She stepped into the back room of her shop, and shortly after, came out with a melting pot and a few plastic bags with powdered materials that seemed similar to cooking condiments, although I knew they were obviously not as they appeared to be. She then took the stone she had previously placed on my forehead and started to melt it. It was actually a soul crystal, as she called it. She started carefully measuring out and incorporating the powders into a hot goo. She kept on adding and mixing for about 5 minutes until she finally acknowledged me. She asked me to come closer as she did so. Without any warning, she took my hand and pinched my finger with a small needle she had, and as soon as a drop of blood splashed into the mixture, she spoke again. She softly whispered in a kind of pseudo-Latin, with her eyes closed, and then poured out the hot mixture onto a steel compass to create the needle. I hadn't understood the words, but what really caught my eye was the compass. Why did it need my blood? And why didn't she tell me anything before doing that? Monica handed it to me and briefly explained its function. This is what we call a soul compass. Follow the needle, and it will lead you to the thing you desire most, above anything else. Maybe finding what you truly need can help you handle your grief a little better. If not, I'm always here to help. I thanked her and left. This got me really curious, so I decided to follow the needle until it stopped moving. It led me to Cassie's house. Don't panic, I thought to myself. Maybe it's leading me to something inside of Cassie's house, not Cassie herself. I don't know why, but I thought it'd be a great idea if I waited for her to leave her house so I could take a look around. Why do I keep putting myself in dangerous situations? Maybe that's why I so often see things I'm not supposed to see. At about 8 p.m., a little over an hour after I got there, I saw her leaving her house all dressed up for a night out on the town. But she was with Max? Why? I saw the compass needle follow her every step as she walked with my friend. At first I felt bad about breaking into her house, but now I needed to find out why she'd been hanging out with Max. I needed to know more. I just couldn't resist. I stepped out of my car and carefully made my way towards her room. She always kept the window slightly open enough for someone to sneak in. She was just as clumsy as Sophia in that regard. Before I knew it, I was in Cassie's room, and nothing really stood out until I took a closer look at the desk. A bunch of messy, unorganized paperwork and 2 perfectly packaged, unopened envelopes. To hell with it, I thought, and opened the first one. It was a bank receipt for the purchase of a property in Paris. Holy shit, I didn't know Cassie was moving to Paris, and I certainly didn't know that she had that kind of money. However, my that's weird reaction quickly turned into a what the hell when I opened the second envelope. It was a letter signed by Jamie Watkins. Dear Sophia, I would like to inform you that so far everything is going swimmingly. Thanks to Maximilian's Surf Shop, I've been able to move my products like never before, and as a thank you gift, I bought you two a nice apartment out in the country. I will allow myself to suggest that you two move there as quickly as possible. I imagine the dental analysis for Cassie's body will be in rather soon, and when that happens, your cover will be blown. Best regards, Jamie Watkins. Looks like we might be doing a little bit of traveling today. From the shore, we're heading over to our next destination, brought to us by Femur Aerodox, where we'll be taking a little jaunt over to nowhere, North America.
I want to feel something again. The trees are bare. I watch them from the windows. Their limbs dance in the wind. Limbs too thin, like the arms of dying men, like the elbows of the sick. Too many limbs dancing their sickly dance, painting me with their moving patterns. I've become a canvas, it seems. I cough into my arm. It's that time of the year again. Nearly winter, and many of us are coughing. An elderly couple walks by the window, hand in hand, and for a moment they're on my chest, because the sun is low. Their shadows bleed onto me, and for a moment they're walking hand in hand across the street as well as on my chest. It was just a moment, though, before their journey made them leap off my shoulder and onto the wall. The man lets go of her hand and coughs into his fist. Out of sight now, but very much in my mind. I envied the couple. I want to be in love. I want to know that feeling again. Any feeling. Oh, but I do know one feeling. It's the only feeling I can recall for certain, 'cause it's the last feeling I ever felt. It lives in my head like a memory, and when I want it, I can conjure it up from deep below the surface, like a demon from hell, or the spirit of a dead and buried horse, something wild and fierce to ride, a surfer on a rogue wave. Sometimes I do just that, just to feel one thing, anything. Fear. Suffocating fear. Abject fear. Fear, fear, fear. I look for it now and bring it to the surface. I dig it up. My heart matches the speed of its gallop. I stagger and stumble and fall backwards to the floor as I hug my knees and shake. I make a sound, an unconscious sound, a trembling monotone note, the hum of the damned. I'm transported back through time, and suddenly I'm on the dirt road in nowhere North America. My ride is now a cloud of dust on the horizon. Goodbye, joy. Goodbye, other life. Goodbye to so many things, all of them existing in that cloud of dust like an unreachable galaxy. It's dusk, the sun just a red streak below a purple sky. Ahead of me is a house, a quiet, comfy home. The lights are on and cast a tungsten orange glow. Beside the house, there's an axe lodged deep into a stump beside a woodpile. It's my parents' house, and I know it well. I've contributed to that woodpile. I bet that the bottom of the stack could have been my work. The crickets own the night. They play the same song on their endless arena tour. It's a fan favorite. I'll admit that growing up in this bucolic countryside had its luxuries. The clean air, the smell of earth, the lilting hills, the surrounding vibrance and vitality of every living thing. The very ground was rich and fertile, and inside our house, each window was really a painting, and the paintings moved when I moved. The people were kind and neighborly. It was quiet and peaceful and perfect. But something lived with us there. Something cruel and malevolent lurked in the shadow of each peaceful night. Something as rotten and damp as the wood at the bottom of the wood stack invading our comfy home. I knew it because I had seen it around, watching us, waiting for an opportunity to pounce. I heard it in the silence of the laundry room as I walked by towards the warm, welcoming light of the kitchen. I saw it contort on the walls, black and gangly, too many limbs, thin and sickly, but smiling. It was a disease, and its smell was noxious. I left home early, 16 years old. My parents may not mind living in a haunted house, but I couldn't stomach it. It plagued my mind with troubled thoughts, and I knew that pretty soon I'd do something bad, something terrible. I needed to escape. My thumb took me all the way from nowhere North America to everywhere Earth. I was a ramblin' man, a hobo king, a rebel and a bum. I got into drugs, fights, bad situations, good situations, all kinds of shit. My life was saturated and beautiful. I was a walking outlaw. I've heard songs about me. I left that peaceful, comfy home and never looked back. I chose to live rough, down in the weeds. I got a phone call one day. I'm not sure how they got my number, but my father called me up. I hadn't spoken to my parents in years. I thought about them nearly every day, but I was on the run. My dreams sometimes took me back, and in my dreams I had premonitions. A cloud of blackbirds covering the sky above my parents' house. A lonely sky of nowhere North America. And on the roof and the eaves and the gutters, they sat and cawed and watched me approach with their terrible ink-splotched eyes. My father's voice was on the phone then, and I was telling Janet to shush, but she was naked and tugging on my sleeve. I told her to hush, but she wouldn't, so I put a finger in my ear and listened to my dad. He sounded sick. He was sick. He begged me to come home. A mixture of feelings, a tie-dyed blend of emotions. I had to go. I owed them that much, didn't I? So I went, all the way from everywhere Earth, back to nowhere North America. It took weeks and a hand job or two to get there, but I finally made it. I had arrived. I thanked the driver, Tommy was his name, and tapped the hood of his car. He drove off, and I'm here again. Tommy was a dust cloud on the horizon, the sky a deep purple above a streak of red, and there were lights on in the house. But I had lied. There was no axe lodged deep in the stump by the woodpile. That was a wishful thought. Goodbye, axe. Goodbye, woodpile. I walked up the steps, feeling a little uneasy. There were no omens here, no dark birds on the roof. This was not a reoccurrence of my dream, but still, there was something foul in the air. A smell like dead, rotten wood, damp and infested with mites. My father was dying, brain cancer, a baseball-sized tumor, he'd said. One would think you'd be able to see it, pulsating through the skull. I'd spoken with my mother since his summoning call, and she had said that it affected his behavior. It put pressure on the part of his mind where feelings reside. He'd cry for no reason at all. He'd laugh like a child as he swatted at flies. His sickness pressed the keys. He was a carousel of painted horses. The horses went by these names: anger, suffering, pleasure, malcontent, melancholy, indignation, repulsion, curiosity, shame, and fear. What I would do to ride those horses now, but only one was available to me. Before knocking, I glanced to the side, towards the lawn and the woodpile and the lone stump. It wasn't fair for them to bring me back here. It wasn't fair that my father was dying. It wasn't fair that I'd have to expose myself to the contortionist that lived in our house, a disease that dampened all my moods but one, a poltergeist with incredible powers, the power to fill my head with troubled thoughts. I thought of Janet and felt nothing, because I was only a guest in this memory. In the moment, though, in the actual moment that I thought of her, I felt a pang of longing, and for a moment, it felt like my heart was attached to a grappling hook, and I reeled on my heels as I tried to step forward, towards the house in its orange glow. I was instead pulled 10 steps backwards, towards the dust on the horizon, away from the empty stump, towards her and our love ballad. I jumped off the horse. I unhinged my knees and let the note drop. I sat on the floor in a shaft of light. The wall behind me was a canvas, and in it my father danced. His frail, sickly limbs waved back and forth. His knobby elbows bent and twisted. In his bony hands he held an axe. It came up and down. Rain like blood began to tap on my windows, and it painted the scene with gore. I wished I could feel something. There's something here that suppresses it all, though. The blunt end of an axe, or a cruel entity in the dark corners of the house. Something powerful, with the ability to cover me up with a smile. Something with the ability to put me in a box and leave me there to scream and suffocate. There's a scar above my right eye. It's where my fear resides. My painted horse. It beckons me, and I climb aboard. It brays, wild and fierce, and I ride that rogue wave with my arms around its neck. I hug my knees and begin to hum. I tremble. The crickets hear an almighty orchestra. I climb the steps and stand on the rickety porch. It needs a new paint job. Maybe red. Or purple. Like the sky. I knock on the door back home, the door to coziness and comfort. But also, not just that. Something evil lives here, too. I wait. Goodbye, laughter. Goodbye, sweet bliss. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. No one answers. I let myself in. It's not uncommon in the country to leave the doors unlocked, so this doesn't evoke any immediate concern. But I know better, because I'm only visiting. I've been here before, and I know better. My grip tightens around the neck of the beast I ride, my sweaty hands clutching madly at its silky hair, my face buried in a black mane. I let myself in. I can never get out. It's a box in which I suffocate. The wall is a canvas of abstract art. It's smeared red and purple in complex patterns, the paint still wet. The floor is where you dip your brush, a spreading puddle. My father greets me with a half smile. One side of his face remains in a palsy frown, but the other side of his face was alive and exuberant, exalted even. He must have been very happy to see me, because he practically erupted with lunatic joy, and he danced up and down and did a little spin. And behind his shoulder, something pitch black, black as the eyes of the birds in my dreams, watches us and smiles at me with black teeth. It lifted a thin black hand and a nice to meet you wave. Goodbye, love. Goodbye, trust. My father's arms were thin as my thumb. They were long and skeletal, weak, his legs unstable stilts, shaking under his weight. He held his arms up above his head, and in his hands was an axe. My mother lay at his feet, an open sack of spilled tomatoes, her eyes like empty pits, dead and glaring, admiring the art on the wall. Goodbye, Faith. Goodbye, sweet lullaby. I turned around and stared out at the world through the still open door. A dirt road in the bucolic countryside. A purple sky above nowhere North America. Home, no more. The crickets hit a crescendo, and it was all I could hear. And then I turned back to the horror that I faced, and my father was right before me, exalted, insane, a man possessed. His feeble arms had wondrous strength, for he brought the axe down hard, blunt end first, and it got me right above the eye. Goodbye, feelings. I did not fall unconscious. My vision blurred, and my right eye watched my father dance through a red veil. The artist came in for another stroke, but I knocked him aside. I wanted to scream because the ride was out of control, the carousel spinning too fast. The family I left, the family I always knew was there if I needed them, the family I would have returned to eventually, and the puppeteer in the shadow of the laundry room, standing there, smiling at me. I turned back to my father, who was still within the grips of his frenzy. He wasn't really my father now. He was a skeleton from a zombie flick, and he had strings coming out of his back, strings that led to the laundry room, much like the tether around my heart that led back to Janet. My father was at its mercy, and it did with him as it would. His arms danced above his head, his legs shook at the knees above the shins. I swallowed dry fear. It tasted like venom, and I calmly plucked the axe from his broken-looking fingers. He was agitated and scratched at me. He called me a whore. My father called me a whore. I walked through the front door and gently closed it behind me. My father did not follow. I descended the steps that once led to my childhood home, and in the purple night I swung that bloody axe into the stump where it belonged. I sat down in the grass, a front row ticket to the cricket show, and hugged my knees and joined their song. The song was called Hum of the Damned, and it was a hit. I got off the horse then, the ride finally over. I don't know why I put myself through that sometimes, but I can't go too long in this apathy. Even fear is better than nothing at all. I left my room and the two-way window. Two-way because it was itself just a painting. And when I moved, the painting moved with me. But also, when the sun was angled correctly, The objects in the painting cast themselves through, onto the chests of the viewers and the bare wall beyond. But the sun was low now, a red streak on the horizon. I worked my way slowly, each creaking step. I did not want to wake my new roommate. He nested silently in the laundry room. Carefully, on tiptoes, I stepped to the door and gently pried it open. I was hit by the nippy breeze of November, a sobering cool that drank the sweat from my brow. My fear now a distant memory, I stood on the rickety porch and stared out at the purple sky in which rain somehow fell from a single black cloud above the house. Over on the lawn there was a stump, and protruding from it like an oblong tumor was the hilt of an axe. They meant nothing to me. I'd said my farewells. The crickets sang their song, and I was unmoved. I thought of Janet, and felt nothing at all. I could leave. I knew that. I could walk down the steps and wander forever down the roads to that unreachable galaxy, to mingle as one with all the dust out there on the horizon. I could. But I had strings coming out of my back, and when my master awoke, he would make me dance. I sighed out of habit, because I really didn't feel like anything that should have resulted in a sigh, and went back inside. I tiptoed up the creaky steps and coughed into my arm. I heard something shuffle in the dark of the hallway. I didn't care. I went to my room and shut the door. The sun's down. My wall is bare. I'm bare. Maybe tomorrow there will be more trees, like limbs dancing on the wall, or couples coughing. Maybe tomorrow I'll envy the dog who sticks his curious muzzle in the rat-infested drain pipe. Maybe tomorrow I'll go for another ride. But for now, I think I'll sleep. And in my dreams, I'll ride that carousel. I'll take a ride on each horse. Oh, how sweet it will be, my dreams, to feel something, anything, besides that dry venom, besides the taste of that black mane, besides the swell of that rogue wave. How sweet it will be to sit on that cloud of dark birds and call it home.
Looks like our time is almost at an end. But don't worry, we've got one more great story before it's time to say so long. Brought to us by fellow Realside Matt. Let's hear a story about a strange student with an odd outlook on the world.
Before starting this post, even if it's a story that happened years ago, I just want to make it clear that every name included in this post was changed to make sure to protect the kid's privacy. You see, ever since I met this kid, he's always intrigued me. But no matter how hard I try to ignore the little strange things surrounding him, I can't seem to brush off that awful feeling which shakes my composure. A feeling that creeps on me every time I look at him from afar, from where he can't see me. I was 36, and he was no more than 7. I should be responsible. I was his teacher, be able to rationalize everything and keep my head cool no matter the circumstances. Yet, it's getting harder and harder to act like nothing is wrong with how his brain is working. I'm not trying to inculpate him. I actually fear what his behavior might do to me in the following years. Hence why I'm writing this. You see, this particular student, whom I'm calling Basile, for clarity's sake, has always acted a bit out of it, as my colleagues and some of my friends put it. He's a kid that's always loved smiling, for no particular reason. He just loves doing it. However, I started to sense that something was wrong with him when he wouldn't stop, even after getting hurt or messing up in class. I can guarantee that Basile might be the clumsiest student I've ever had. What generally unnerves me the most about Basile, however, is his prolonged periods of complete blackout. He has a tendency to completely shut his brain off to the rest of the world and simply watch in silence the emptiness around him, only coming back with a laugh and teary eyes when someone urges him to respond. It's like he lives in his own little world most of the time. Sadly, it's a major deterrent in his social life. Given that he mostly dozes off or shuts his brain down during class, he's a subject of mockery that can resemble bullying a bit too much for my taste. I try my best to mitigate this negative attention he seems to always get, but that doesn't stop him from slowly becoming a pariah during breaks. To be fair, Basile does have something close to a friend. Well, at least he seems to like him, even if that feeling isn't mutual. It's a kid that I'll call Quentin, and what you should remember about him is that he unfortunately got caught in a car crash with his family. All survived with more or less minor injuries, except for Quentin, who lost the usage of his legs. He was inconsolable for weeks, mostly because he couldn't partake in his favorite sport anymore. That's when Basile started to become extremely interested in him, and when I truly started to see just how deep the rabbit hole surrounded this kid goes. Quentin, after finally gathering the courage to go back to school for the first time in months, was immediately jumped by Basile. Obviously, a lot of them were curious or saddened by his state. Basile, however, really was the only one to be excited about it. He didn't seem to have any ill will towards his now disabled comrade, yet the whole class was off-put by his earnest attempts to cheer Quentin up, often resulting in some fighting and crying on Quentin's side. Strangely, his protests never deterred Basile, who simply continued this thing without bearing any hard feelings or getting angry at the other kids. He became way more active, but was still trapped inside his bubble. He could still spend minutes, maybe hours, just staring into space, especially in class. In the end, I think it worked out, though. After days of trying to make Basile stop bothering Quentin, the latter came to me and simply asked to let him be. Even if I don't know why he's changed so much, he's the only one at school that treats me like a person. Doesn't make everything a pity party. He's kind of nice, even if he's weird, so I don't mind his presence. It didn't feel satisfying at all. Didn't feel right at all. Nonetheless, since both parties seemed content with the situation, I couldn't get involved in all of this. At least, I shouldn't have. But Basile's behavior seemed stranger and stranger to me. He was starting to speak of seeing Quentin walking in an empty space. He drew disturbing imagery, sometimes simply coloring the page with one color, before speaking of the many wonders inside the color. I couldn't bear it anymore. I needed to find its root. I wondered many times before going through with this if I was going insane. Still, my curiosity and my fear won over my rationality, so I asked Basile to stay in class. He didn't seem to really mind or question why I asked him. Thankfully, he actually came instead of forgetting about the appointment, as he tended to do for anything related with administration. However, his clumsiness or lack of attention led to him hitting a wall and getting the door to his face while trying to walk up to my office. I also noted his lack of focus when I tried to reassure him that he didn't look too bad. He seemed entirely comfortable with how he acted these past few weeks. No regret or self-doubt. This led me to audibly sigh. Basile didn't seem to catch my exasperation. His expression remained unwavering. A small smile, empty eyes, and it was as if he was frozen like a statue. Knowing I wouldn't go far by trying to find a roundabout way to get him to explain his change in attitude, I opted for a more straightforward approach. Basile, I need you to be honest with me. What is it, Teach? The sentence actually piquing his curiosity. I spoke again, hoping my tone wouldn't betray any kind of nervousness. What's going on with Quentin? Why did you suddenly feel the need to be nice towards him? His apathy was replaced by something I couldn't read at the time. He looked extremely embarrassed, but
also guilty. And still, he let out a laugh. It didn't sound childish despite his age. It sounded desperate. I can make things right if I can take care of Quentin. He was starting to shake as his voice became weaker and weaker. However, this sudden show of weakness was quickly replaced by a sudden jump onto my desk. Teach, can I ask you a question? I backed off a bit before actually answering. Sure, but stay in your chair, please. He made a small, apologetic sound before resuming his talking. If something disappears, it's -1, right? I had no idea where he was going with this. Yeah? Ignoring my confusion, he continued. But if something is given in return, it's +1, right? I nodded in response. He was beaming with misplaced pride. He probably misunderstood my confusion or thought getting his teacher confused made him smarter. Well, if -1 meets +1, then they cancel each other out, so nothing has happened in the end. I couldn't bear seeing the conversation get more and more astray, so I asked, Basil, where are you going with this? Then it hit me. Is this about Quentin's lost legs and how you're trying to be an uplifting influence on him? Is that it? I appreciate you trying so hard to brighten his day, but I wasn't sure what to say next, or if him comparing this ordeal to a mathematical operation was a good sign or not. But in the end, I took it as just a little boy being concerned for a classmate's well-being. However, he looked at me strangely. No, the -1 is me. The +1 is Quentin's bad day. I was dead wrong. His cold answer, one that seemed so logical in his mind, frightened me. This was the first time in my career I felt any kind of fear towards one of my pupils. I struggled to get out another word, but I needed to know more. What do you mean by that? He smiled brightly, innocently. Well, I'm a bad kid, so this accident gives me a chance to be better. Flabbergasted, outraged, speechless. These words wouldn't even be enough to describe how I was feeling at that moment. Several thoughts plagued my mind. What kind of 7-year-old thinks and acts this way? How can he say things like that with such a carefree attitude? What about that moment of weakness? Did I imagine it? I tried to pry a bit more, but he wouldn't speak about it. His brain had shut down when I asked about why he thought of himself this way. He left my office without listening to me, that unnerving boy disappearing from my view, although his little cries in the corridor didn't escape my ears. I had the urge to join him in the corridor and comfort him, especially if he actually was putting up a front when talking about his self-esteem issues. Yet I stopped myself. I rationalized that me suddenly showing up wouldn't help him open up to me. But as he left, I heard his footsteps coming to a sudden halt. A weak "Dad" was all I could fully understand before the footsteps came back in my direction. Basil was standing in my doorway, his eyes darker than anything I'd ever seen. He wasn't saying anything, just looking at me at what felt like an eternity. I tried to say something, but the words just died in my throat. He opened his mouth to answer my almost question. If only I could trade your life for his, you invading prick. But it was deep, too deep. His voice couldn't belong to a child. Still, Basil was the only thing in front of me. He had to have said it. I was petrified. He left without saying another word. The suffocating silence of the classroom was all that reminded me of the fact that I was alive. After minutes, maybe hours, I continued my usual routine as if nothing had happened. I locked the classroom, went to my car, and drove myself home as I sat on my run-down sofa. Nothing out of the ordinary. Except I had no recollection of ever doing that. It was as if my mind had been completely shut down. I simply awoke in the middle of the night, briefly wondering how I even got back to my flat before going back to sleep. Well, sleep is a generous word to describe what happened that night. Nightmares kept me company, and I had to call off the next day due to my unbelievable tiredness. Eventually, I calmed down and went back to my job, but I became wary of Basil. I found myself staring at him more and more, hoping to prevent him from catching me by surprise. However, my behavior ended up being a frequent subject of questions and discussions among the students. Not wanting the situation to get out of control, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I needed to stop being worried about one of my students, especially if my behavior could end up damaging said student's reputation. I was a professional. I couldn't let my bias overtake my duties. I was scared. It pains me to admit it now, but I found myself terrified of Basil. Being scared of a grade schooler. How pathetic. That's why it took me a month to properly gather up the courage to ask for a meeting with his family. In the meantime, the rumors had begun to run rampant, and some people tried to bully Basil. I felt ashamed. It was exactly what I had predicted, yet I could not act to defend this child. Luckily, Quentin had stepped in, even amongst his former friends. I wasn't sure if their friendship was healthy, but I was glad he was around, no matter how uncomfortable I got while watching them play. Sometimes, Basil would show Quentin people or events that didn't seem to exist or happen. He could also hurt him by saying that he could see him running freely somewhere, or abruptly stop his movements to cry out at something. As for Quentin, sometimes he would brawl with Basil, or a bully, but most of the time, he would push Basil out of harm's way. It was strange how poor his luck seemed to be. Nonetheless, they were happy like this. I didn't know what to think. Still, I needed to meet his family. So, I stopped finding excuses. That's why 2 weeks later, I found myself at the doorstep of a small but seemingly cozy house. I was greeted by a middle-aged lady, looking slightly older than I was. She invited me in, but I found no sign of Basil, only pictures of him with a man I didn't recognize. When I asked her about her son, her face illuminated with motherly joy. "Oh, my little angel isn't here right now. He's currently playing with his new friend." I tried to get her to clarify what she meant. "Are you talking about Quentin?" She clapped her hands together. "Yes, that's his name. He's one of your students, I assume." Poor thing. She didn't add anything else, but she didn't have to. She knew about the accident. That meant I could safely bring out the topic of Basil's behavior more easily. I cleared my throat. "Yeah, Quentin's been the subject of something terrible." She cut me off before I could add anything else. "That's why I'm proud of my baby for deciding to become his friend. I was scared he would end up alone, but to hear that those two are getting along so well, it's truly a miracle." The heavy feeling in my chest came back. No point in beating around the bush. I needed to be more direct. "About that, miss, I think your son's not being a healthy support system for Quentin." Her cheerful behavior slowly faded away, being replaced by something I could only describe as saddened resignation. Her smile was still there, but much thinner, her eyes pleading me to stop talking. A faint, "Oh no," left her lips. I found it strange that his first friend was handicapped because of... I found myself insisting, pushing her to tell me why Basil is the way he is. Tears started to stroll down her face, so I reassured her. "Miss, I want to help both of these kids, but please, be honest with me. What happened to Basil? Why is he the way that he is?" Regardless of her tears, her eyes looked into mine. The sadness and fatalism were mixed together in a stare I would remember my entire life. "Basil heard his father die in a car crash while on the phone with him." Despite sitting in a chair, I felt my entire body grow heavier with each passing second. I couldn't move. Images were flashing inside my head. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I said to the woman, who was now barely holding her tears. My words were sincere, but they must have sounded so fake to someone who's still in grievance. Still, I continued to talk in hopes that I would learn more and diffuse the situation. "If I'm not being too indiscreet, you already were, you idiot," I told myself. "May I learn more about Basil, how he was prior to this, and how this affected him?" His mother silently nodded, eyes still red, and told me everything. "You see, My son has always been a secluded person with a view of the world that nobody could fully grasp. Among what you would describe, like seeing fictional persons or drawing moves on his own, are things he actually did before. Thankfully, his father did his best to connect with him, and it worked. Basil was always excited to show him his new creation or talk about his latest epiphany, but then the tragedy struck. A hiccup interrupted her tale, so I timidly tried to reassure her. If it's too hard for you, don't feel obliged to continue. She shook her head. No, I feel it's good to let everything out. Another oddity surrounding Basil is his poor luck. Whenever he tries to do something, most of the time it backfires. Some of the more superstitious members of the family even ended up thinking he was cursed. That's obviously not the case. It's ridiculous. But only my husband, his father, had the strength to protest, defend him, against them. Hearing this, a question came to me. Is that outlook on his luck one of the reasons he mostly prefers to keep to himself? She offered a weak, I don't know, as a response before saying, at least fictional characters can't hurt him. Another pause in the conversation happened, the air gradually becoming tenser and tenser. He heard everything. When I asked him to phone his father, I never expected. Her face gradually lost her color. That should have been my cue to stop prodding. But I didn't. I was foolish enough to continue. I've also seen Basil get lost in his mind, even with his new friend. He can cry or laugh about whatever he sees. Is there something other than fictional characters or famous people that he can think about? Has he ever talked to you about it? Wordlessly, his mother stood up and incited me to follow her up the stairs. A bit of a silent walk later, we arrived in the attic, where a little box stood out. It was well kept compared to the dusty furniture all around it. She opened it and took out a stack of papers. He never explicitly told me, but I've seen his drawings, she said before handing them over. I felt like I was going to cry myself. Most had little notes in the left corner, explaining when or how he saw these visions. Most were crudely drawn, but strong with emotions. Some had Quentin happily walking. Some had Basil's father cuddling him or coming to school to take him home. But others were red or black, scribbled messes. Me when Dad got hurt. Dad going elsewhere. Quentin leaving. Me when Mom doesn't love me anymore. His imagination was completely corrupted by tragedy. No matter how hard he tried to forget it, his subconscious would catch up. His positive daydreams would turn to nightmares. He blamed himself for everything. I could now understand what he meant, despite how twisted his -1+1 explanation sounded. He was just a kid, trying to fix his mistake after being given another chance. Although with that said, one of his drawings intrigued me more than others. It was a poorly drawn representation of himself, being held by the throat by a black figure. He haunts me. I presented it to his mother. Miss, what is that? What are you doing? It was that voice again, the voice that shouldn't belong to a child. The two of us turned around instinctively to see Basil, knife in hand, an expression of pure rage on his face. His mother tried to calm him down. Basil, snap out of it. However, instead, his eyes locked onto me, with a look of hatred so intense, he couldn't just describe it with words. He rushed at me and stabbed violently at my knee. The pain was unbelievable. Yells, blood, cries. That's all I saw before I fainted from shock. When I awoke, I was being taken by ambulance. The mother was frantically apologizing to me. I tried to reassure her, but when I saw Basil showing no remorse next to her, I couldn't bring myself to be gentler with her. My fears had come back, and his eyes haunted me to this day. What was he talking about in that drawing? Surely ghosts aren't real. However, what is it that possesses him during these violent outbursts? I think I'll never know for sure. After I recovered from my leg wound, at least as much as I could, the school administration made no concessions. Seeing that I was now forced to have a cane with me for the rest of my life, they promptly excluded Basil from school. Quentin tried to continue going to school, but the bullying and rumors were too tough even for him. He begged to be sent where Basil was. Apparently they reunited in some sort of youth re-education center. I had no idea if I should be opposed to this decision, but it didn't matter. Sadly, that's all there is to it. These conversations and drawings did give me the insight on how Basil saw the world. A lonely place that he might make friendlier, but I couldn't help him. His deep-rooted self-loathing, his general lack of focus, his obsession with Quentin. Speaking of which, neither of them showed up at the class reunion, which happened this year. According to one of their classmates, the soul who actually saw them after they went to rehab, it was better that way. Had Basil crossed a line? Had he rendered Quentin so dependent on him? Just like a lot of things in this post, I don't know. I couldn't even think or say anything when the student told me about it. So, here I am, now 48. 13 years have passed. Multiple children became my pupils, and I didn't encounter another Basil ever again. The doubts are eating me alive as I write this, for failing to offer any kind of solution, for letting this disturbing kid get away. Am I a failure as a teacher?
And just like that, our time is at an end once again. But don't be too distraught. I'm sure there'll be more great stories by yours truly tomorrow here on Cozy Horror. Until then, this is Dr. Plague wishing you a wonderful day and a spooky evening.